B and C plates. You can have B and C plates, unless they're commercial and they have a logo or a label of a commercial entity. You can only have one commercial vehicle on your property outside, we're saying outside, whether it be B, C, or D. But you can have two D-plated, non-commercial, but only one D-plated commercial. The police can enforce that very easily. So there, there's kind of, we'll put the text to it to include some of the Matawa language of, saying what we don't want, but we'd like you to kind of take number A. Is that a consensus? I think it's a consensus, but I want to make sure it is, on the B and C plates. And then a maximum of two D-plated trucks for your, whether it be your horses or your hobbyist trailer of RVs, and then a max of one D-plated pickup type truck per property. Commercial, one D-plated commercial property, or vehicle on your property. And then the language we had from Matawa that says this is not a pickup, the big trucks and describing box trucks, semis, we'd still put that in as what we're not allowing. Because spell that out, but the text would basically allow this. The question is, to Trustee Muncie's point in another conversation, do we want to say inside or out? I've got it just outside. I don't think I can regulate the inside very easily, but he does raise points that could be problematic.
I think if someone takes the effort to put an outside structure in their property to store things inside, I don't care what's in there. I mean, I think that's a great way. Let's say a guy is a mechanic and his boss is like, you have the job because I let you take the truck home. Well, and I had this situation at my work. The guy took it home, he built a building. He got okay for it, he put the building in, boom, everybody was happy, neighbors liked him. Nobody was, and I think it's a great out for the guy if he wants to keep a living going or run a business. Because I have no problem with what you have or what you're doing in your garage to a limit. I mean, once again, going back to full, like a business or something like that we restricted. But no, I think it's a great way of, it's like kind of like a safety outlet for the whole thing. Or if a guy wants to build a building, he's allowed to, and then we're all good, right?
Well, what if he parks it in his driveway, though? You're good with that? If he doesn't build an outbuilding?
No, that's what I'm saying, though. I mean, I'd like this
One
rule.
D-plate.
But if he's going to build a
One
building to
D-plate.
store it, well, then why would I have any issue with it at all?
Okay.
None.
Because we still restrict the business being on that site.
Go ahead, Janet.
I'm trying to get clarity on what the question's being asked on B, because we're saying an unlimited number of B and C plates and a maximum of two D
I
plates,
think one's commercial.
and a maximum of one.
One commercial.
One commercial D.
One commercial.
Well, B and C are written the same, so we want C to say a maximum of one commercial D pickup truck?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot when I was doing that.
So, I mean, that seems fine to me.
D-plated, so that, the B is non-commercial.
Yeah, we left off that word.
That's my thought, yeah.
Carmen, is that good enough?
I mean, some folks might have 3D plates because they've got a lot of horses, but I don't know that we've got anybody that needs more than
Yeah,
two
I think we can.
D plates to haul their horses. Ed wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, just to be clear, we have removed from Kane County the indoors and outdoors storage of heavier vehicles.
He wants to go.
I'll wait till President Winnicky can listen as well. I just want to make sure everybody can chime in. So in the previous Kane County ordinance and in 2023, it stated that vehicles in excess, commercial vehicles in excess of what we were allowing outdoors also could not be stored indoors. And it stated that commercial commercial equipment and supplies could not be stored indoors or outdoors. So it was, again, trying to limit that. I'm running a contracting or a trucking business on a residential area. That's what I was asking, should we add this back in? Anything with a higher than a D plate, so you've got a semi, you've got a whatever else,
Is not, is prohibited. You want to spell that out?
I would like to spell that out indoors and outdoors, yes. That we can't run a semi-trucking business with 2 semis on a 3-acre lot, just because you had a building big enough to put those 2 semis in. That I think, I respect people that want to run their businesses, but again, that's not for a residential area.
Yeah, I think the police chief is like, to keep it as a plate, because we all can enforce that. I don't have to train every officer, and it's not
Yeah,
as
anything higher
subjective.
than a D plate, indoors or out. Can't do it. And storage of equipment and supplies.
I know.
I don't think we have,
Can't go back and
we're
forth.
not speaking. please.
Yeah, she's not.
You're out of order.
Yeah, I guess there's consensus on this language, but do you want to add prohibitions of any plate larger than D, in or out? That's what is on the table.
That would be my preference, yes.
Is there a second, third, and fourth on that added?
You want to speak, Nick? Sure. Sure.
So I'm trying to understand how we are now moving from folks' driveways to what they do inside of their garage or their barn. Like, even using the example, and even the images are of these semis, just creating a mud pit and this obnoxious noise. I could also, if we want to use semis as an example, talk about the hardworking father who just drove cross-country, gets home and parks his semi in a barn. But, we're talking about semis, it could be any vehicle. It can be a plumbing contractor who has an F plate on his heavy-duty van and he wants to park it in his pole barn. Now, he has to rent parking. I just don't understand. It seems very subjective. We're kind of painting these horror stories, but there's so much more to it than that. So I think overall, we do not involve ourselves in what happens inside people's homes, in their garages, or their detached buildings, like, period. I don't think that there's any way we should be involved in that. And I don't know why we want to. What does it matter what's inside a building?
Well, what the police chief says, he's had issues with semis at some farm sites that have bigger pole barns, and they pull out. They're not a problem usually in the summer. They pull out and they warm up at 3:30, 4:30, and he's chasing them. And we've just got him under control since the year I've been here. There's been 3 properties that had that problem. And if we didn't have the prohibition about the semis, they would be legal. And, because what they do inside, they pull out onto their open air to warm up in the wintertime is the problem, Nick. And it creates a nuisance, and then we're chasing them on the nuisance ordinance.
But at that
for the
point, they're
For the
outside,
noise violation and stuff. And that's kind of where the chief is at. Because they don't just stay in the barn. They come out and warm up for a period of time, and
That's
the neighbors
true.
are upset.
Just a response, may I respond? Okay, thank you. I understand that people are calling in about semi-trucks, but I think that the same things happen and maybe you don't get calls. Souped-up rear-wheel drive vehicles, these big souped-up diesel pickup trucks. I mean, all of these vehicles, when they start up in the winter, are loud. Neighbors hear them. I've got a guy across the street, it warms up. I notice it every time when I'm sitting in my backyard, it makes me jump. I mean, it happens, there's noises, things happen. People have to start a vehicle, it's normal. Tractors, what if you gotta start your tractor in the morning? It makes the same noise. I mean, we're restricting, and I really feel like it also starts to get into people's livelihoods. And I really think we're crossing over a boundary that can really affect people's livelihoods. I just don't see where it's any of our business to get involved in what happens inside a building.
Just to be clear, this isn't allowed now in an unincorporated area in Kane County. It's not allowed now in the village of Campton Hills. It's not like we're adding all these restrictions. I'm just asking, should we continue to do what hasn't been allowed for years in Kane County and what currently is not allowed in our village? I'm not adding anything. I'm asking, should we keep it?
Yeah, and that, to be clear, that's how we've restricted them, because it is against the Kane and Village to have semis and larger plated heavyweight trucks. We just don't normally get after the one-off F or H plate if they don't cause a problem to their neighbor. The semis are a little louder, but yes, you're exactly right. Somebody that has a sports car that tweaks the exhaust pipe systems, they're loud. And we go and enforce them for a noise ordinance if neighbors complain. It's not very rare, it's rare, though.
Go ahead, Janet.
I have an observation and a question. The two D-plated trucks made sense to me from the beginning when we first started talking about it. When we combine B and C together, though, I interpret that as potentially three D-plated trucks. I don't know if that was intended. So is it a maximum of two D-plated trucks, period, and a maximum of one of them is non-commercial, perhaps? Or one of them is commercial, rather? Because are we looking for three D trucks? Yeah, is that, I mean, I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's what we're going for. That's not what I understood.
Well, that was kind of being the most liberal interpretation would be 3D
Okay.
plates.
And then regarding the H vehicles and, semi cabs and stuff, I certainly wouldn't want one living next door to me. I understand it. Once they pull out from the garage, then it's not indoors anymore, is it?
Right.
So aren't they just as vulnerable as if there wasn't a garage at that time?
Yeah, if they pulled off out of their back big barn.
Or do you mean they
steel
pull,
building.
or you're saying they pull halfway out, so?
Well, they pull out far enough to warm up in the winter is the problem. The larger trucks, they don't generally just pull out and get out on the city road and go to work. They warm those vehicles up in the winter usually.
So I have no problem with restricting the H vehicles, but I also appreciate the perspective of not getting into people's houses, garages, and other detached structures.
All right.
Tom had one more thing. He's got some
Oh, Tom?
experience with these big trucks.
Well, once again, is there a way we can come, I mean, I get the semi thing, I do, and you've had experience with it, so it's something that people are complaining about. Once again, we're not talking about neighborhood, we're not talking about Fox Mill. Nobody in Fox Mill cares about semis because it's going to get kicked out of there in 5 seconds. This is for the people that don't live in neighborhoods like me, and I represent them, and so I do want to keep it where it's, so once again, is there like somewhere in between D and a semi that we could draw the line, possibly? I mean, we had two guys, and I'm just bringing this up as an example, and I don't know what an H plate is, to be honest with you. I have to look it up. That might be a push to check weights and stuff, but,
The plates, it's all about weights.
right, I just don't know what, we had semis, and I don't remember what the plate designation was on my semis, but I've been gone for 2 years now, so, but I'll say this, I mean, there was a couple guys that were at one of the meetings, and I know it's just a couple, but they're like, hey, I'm a mechanic and I have an H plate, what's the big deal? That's kind of the people I'm thinking of when I'm looking at people inside of a building. But I would be open to, if we could say, okay, up to this plate, no, Is there a compromise there with a plate?
Well, and I
with a
think
plate?
the zoning commission had that for hours and
Yes,
discussion, and they came down on D.
okay.
Because that most relates back
Okay.
to the county 1 ton
Okay.
that we had before as the guiding point.
So they were trying to mirror the Kane County law? by doing that?
Somewhat,
Okay.
because,
Okay.
and they're very sensitive to somebody that one day a week, he might be on call and has to
Okay.
bring his bigger vehicle. Are we gonna go and snap him up usually? No. It's the continuous.
Okay, so it looks like to me where we're at is I think we have agreement, consensus on everything here except for do we allow these things to be parked inside of buildings, right? Is that pretty much what we're talking about? Okay, well, that, I would say, you know, we've made progress. I would think that, once again, this is one of those things that, let's get Mike in here and see where he's at with it. I think this is, on these greater principles, I believe that, you know, we were handed this thing with a unanimous vote. I think it needs to leave this board with a unanimous vote, I really do. Yes, yeah, and I think that's the way I'd like to handle it, but I'd like to hear, you know, someone's opinion that's not here. I think it's real important. We had a meeting with 3, we've had a meeting with 1 missing. I think we should have a greater meeting with that, and maybe at least leave that, you know, we're close, we're right there. It's just that one line, indoor, outdoor, what do we do with that?
All right, consensus for putting this on the next agenda for discussion. Ed, yes?
And possible passage.
Or you want to speak?
Did
or
have
no?
one other item on the agricultural natural area districts.
Yeah.
Just to see if we could get some consensus on that first. The point of that was, the storage, keeping indoors or out of commercial vehicles, equipment, supplies that are principally utilized for the primary purpose of agriculture within the farm zoning district would be allowed. And the storage, keeping of materials or equipment that are used for purposes that are not the principal purposes of agriculture on the property are not allowed. That's paraphrasing that. But basically, you can't buy a farm and run a contracting business on it just because farm says you can have big trucks and equipment. The big trucks and equipment you can have on a farm are for that farm or other farm properties which you farm. That's it.
I think that the language we tried to do is doing that, because
Yeah.
under the current 2023, I don't know, I doubt it was intentional, but right at the traffic circle at Bochum, the Weiss or Weiss, depending on how you pronounce that last name, they are legal. And they are going to probably, in all likelihood, not have their bigger vehicles in that steel building related to farming, because it's pretty clear that he's got somebody farming that, and he's not the farmer of that extra acres above 4. I don't think it's 20, but it's somewhere between 10 and 15. So it's not agricultural uses that are going to be stored in that big steel building currently. But he's legal and conforms to the 2023 to basically run some type of operation out of that steel building. He is going to be legal. What you're trying to do is not allow the next one to have farm zoning and have a steel building huge that is running a contractor, is what you're getting at, isn't it?
To paraphrase, I guess, I'm not trying to you know,
Specify him, but
any
I've given
particular
you-
person, but
It's
it's
a
in
good
our mission
example.
and vision to protect our agricultural heritage. And
Yeah.
allowing our farms to turn into
Farming should be
contracting
farmed.
companies is not protecting that heritage. So I think we need to make sure we protect our farms by saying you can have commercial, you can have, you know, equipment and vehicles of a commercial size, but they have to be used for the farm or properties that, you know, that you're farming.
And I think that's what the zoning commission was trying to do, hearing some concerns of contractor yards moving out because they're getting squeezed to our east.
And Ed brought this up, he just reminded me, because what I sent to you was, after him bringing this up, so right now, if a guy did, you know, let's say, you know, a guy's running a contracting business, and he's like, yeah, bring a load of wire mesh to my residence and put it outside. Is that blocked by this? Currently, is the storage of supplies not allowed? Any, like, wood stakes, wire mesh, trees?
If there's a building permit for it, and the material is for the building permit.
No, but I mean, like, if
Right.
he was just gonna store it, like, on the side of his building, could he do that? Could he take, like, I mean, like supplies, he could, you know, half the people wouldn't even know what it was, because you're not in construction, so you'd be like, I don't know what that is, sitting next to this guy's property, but when you brought it in, you know, that example, it made me a little nervous, because I'm a little bit like, you know, we're talking about vehicles, but there is a whole, I mean, that's what I sold for a living.
Sure,
I had a
there-
yard full of supplies, you wouldn't even know what half of it is, most people wouldn't, but it's kind of like, you know, a good example, an electrician would get what? He'd buy extra copper, he gets a deal on copper, and he's like, yeah, send me like three massive rolls. Is
Yeah.
this allowed or not allowed?
There
I guess?
is a section on outdoor storage, and I believe it just covers all zoning districts about the storage of materials outdoors. Might run afoul of something in the nuisance code as well, depending on how it's stacked or where it is, or, you know, in the front yard. Since I'm talking, can I go on? I want
Yeah,
to
go
make one
ahead.
point. So trustee Muncy made a good point about the agricultural districts. So in this example here, it's been expanded a tiny bit. So the intention is that any use that would be allowed in an agricultural or farm business district is an active and legal principal use. All of the vehicles in the service of that would be allowed. So the Wasco Nursery, we could say that's agriculture or not, but there are some other uses that might be approved as special use. So any vehicle that they would need for deliveries or anything would be allowed as well, not just farm. So as long as it's permitted, allowed as a permitted use, special use, even I guess if it were a non-conforming use, I mean, that could continue. In the example of someone, you know, leasing out their property for someone as a storage yard, I think the zoning administrator would have he or she would have the ability to go after them and saying, you know, that particular use as a storage yard is not allowed in your district, and that's essentially what you're doing, so you need to remove the trucks. And we actually have a couple adjudication
Right,
cases that are
and
somewhat similar to that.
If you look
coming
at
up
the
on Tuesday.
map that you're approving, there's only one farm business overlay, which is Wasco Nursery. That doesn't mean you couldn't create another that was a farm business, and then by creating that, you would put the restrictions and here their reason for being a farm business. And you could create another overlay like Wasco. Wasco currently is the only one on your map. And that's farm business, and it gives him latitude to do all the things Mr. Brown just enumerated.
Right.
All
And then,
right.
and then one more, continuing down, for logos, this paragraph was in there. I don't think it's really necessary in the vehicle section. We do have another somewhat similar language in the sign code. So what this thing that says logos is essentially saying is, as long as you're not using the vehicle, that logo is a sign. You're not parking the vehicle, they're just parking to have a sign. And that probably wouldn't occur in residential areas anyway. But we do have a general prohibition in the sign code, and I think that's sufficient. I don't think we want to get into regulating the type of logo or anything on that. But, so if we're allowing a commercial vehicle to be parked there, obviously it could have a logo on it and we wouldn't care. Right. So I don't know if this paragraph E logos is necessary because it's covered elsewhere in the ordinance, in the sign code.
Does it cause a problem if it's stated?
You know, in rereading of this, I just think I just prefer not to have it in because I think it's just replicating. It seems rather lengthy and wordy and. No, it wouldn't make it different, but it's already covered, and I think it's covered in a more succinct manner by number 19 there, which is from the sign code.
All right.
That's.
Well, everybody's good? Okay. So I have 9 C&D plates and parking of large vehicles. I have it down for our next meeting. And on our agenda, we had closed session, number 5, but we decided we're going to push that off to the next meeting as well. So 7, our usual, yeah.
Not for this meeting, for the next meeting. There are, I think, other trustees may have other items too that we emailed that did not make this list,
Uh-oh.
including barns, fences, gravel driveways, and a few other ancillary things. So I'd like to include those for the next meeting, please.
Okay. Will you email that to us?
Yeah, I can email it again, yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. Would everybody be able to start the meeting at 6:30? Because it's going to be a long agenda, our next meeting. You can? You have no problem?
No issue.
No issue, Nick? You want to?
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
He might have an issue.
Yeah, well, Mike will be here when yeah, I know, he's got his other position. All right.
I've got one question.
Go ahead, Jim.
So what's the game plan? Next meeting, we're gonna try to wrestle this all to the ground, and when do we think we then would try to move forth?
I mean, if you didn't have major revisions in your discussion Tuesday, you could have it on action and make the recommendation to change it with specified reasons. If Jim and Carmen don't think that it's appropriate to edit on the fly, you're legally allowed to edit on the, and then approve. But if it's too large and we don't think we've got clarity and on it, we would say we'll have to push it to the next meeting. But if it's not something
Yeah,
that's beyond.
I
it-
would be in the camp to push it to the next meeting. If, in fact, we do wrestle it to the ground, simply it then gives the public an opportunity
To see the final
to
language.
see the final document and to give input.
So
as-
it would,
as-
it potentially be, instead of it'd be December 3rd for action to approve, whatever you finish editing next week, next Tuesday.
Janet, go ahead.
I appreciate the transparency in terms of the public, but that are you suggesting that we might then have further debate on the 3rd? Are we, after tonight, then we're going to debate it on Tuesday, not have action, put it on for action 2 weeks after that, which might still have more debate if the idea was that you're going to receive more input from the public or something?
I just think it would be good for the public to have an opportunity to see the finished product. Nothing about, so much about the debate. I think we should err always on the side of transparency. It doesn't hurt us. I don't think there's a rush, I guess is what I'm saying. December 3rd or next meeting, it's what, 2 weeks difference? Not a big deal.
Probably going to be December 3rd for the final, yeah. All right,
Could we please also
Yes.
put this in, it was not announced or mentioned in the last Community Accounts newsletter. Again, I think the public should know, at least those that are interested enough to get our Community Accounts newsletter, that this is going on, so that they can, I mean, I'm frankly kind of surprised not many people showed up tonight, so I think a
There
lot
was
of
also a
people.
calendar error.
True.
Yeah, there was a calendar error, and I even asked some of the members here,
It was
someone
an
had.
error?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I had told Mr. Rooney yesterday that it was not on the calendar.
yeah. I
But
know.
it was posted properly for a legal meeting. There was no question for the
state,
public
yeah.
to think this wasn't a legal proceeding. It was. No, I know. I don't want the public to misconstrue.
All right. Well, motion to adjourn. Tom? Tom's got it.
Second.
Second by Janet. And all in favor, say aye.